for better living.
People at the grassroots tell a different story.
I think people are held hostage to the chemical companies. It's a matter of making a choice, either cancer or unemployment.
Do people need to create places so nature can spread its wings? People do.
But I'm the one that's got to breathe that stuff at night. I'm the one that's going to be laying around here going, I wonder, can I get my breath?
At Mobil, we take care of it as though it were our home.
We are not going to just stretch out and allow America, corporate America, to walk on us.
Whose fault? Whose fault?
In communities across the country, the battle lines have been drawn.
We've got to figure a way to make the siren go off quicker or somebody's going to die. It's got to be quick, it's got to be now, or somebody's going to die.
Tonight, politics, people, and pollution.
Listening to America is made possible by Mutual of America and its family of companies, major underwriters of group pension plans and retirement savings programs. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, a catalyst for change. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and viewers like you.
Welcome to Listening to America. I'm Bill Moyers. If you've been paying attention to the national political campaigns, you haven't heard much about environmental issues. But there's a lot going on around those issues, whether or not the candidates take note. In fact, the most important battles over the environment may even have shifted from Washington to the grassroots, where citizens are challenging polluters directly. We'll meet some of those people later in this broadcast. First, though, we'll take a look at how corporations have responded to the growing challenge from citizens by trying to project a politically correct image. This ad, for example, was distributed by the Chemical Manufacturing Association. Over a picture of the planet, it says, "Handle with responsible care." And then on the other side, quote, over 170 leading companies are saying, "We're responsible." Corporations are also spending millions of dollars on television commercials known in the trade as green advertising. Here are some of the commercials you've seen on television lately.
At Mobil, we take care of it as though it were our home, because it is. Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment.
This is what Mother Nature left us.
Plastic.
You know, I'll bet Mother Nature didn't leave this.
You're right, but plastics can be recycled.
It's not much bigger than your fingernail, yet people who work there protect the area and plant buckwheat. Do people really do that so 1/10 of a gram of beauty can survive? People do.
In just 3 years, we've made over 200 million pounds of hazardous waste vanish from the face of the earth, destroying it with high-temperature incineration, without harm to the environment. We call that making progress.
One of the pioneers in corporate image making is Herb Schmertz, formerly Vice President of Public Affairs for Mobil Oil Company. He's the man who brought Masterpiece Theater to public television many years ago when I was just a kid. Now he has his own public relations firm. Herb, you've come a long way from these quarter-page ads in single newspapers to dolphins, penguins, and sea otters in praise of petroleum. What's going on here?
Well, I think that what you're seeing is corporate America recognizing that they have to engage in the same kind of emotional appeals that their critics have engaged in for a long period of time. Policy in the United States, in my view, is made by special interest groups getting the media's attention, creating a hysterical environment, which then leads to political action by congressmen. And I think that corporate America is engaged in an emotional battle with their critics.
Emotional battle?
Oh, yeah, sure. These are emotionally appealing ads.
What are they really saying to us?
They're really saying that, in terms of appealing to people's emotions, that we're doing the right thing, that we're environmentally okay.
Why do you want to appeal to emotions instead of to the
I didn't say I wanted to.
No, not you. Why do these?
I didn't say I like these ads.
Do you?
No.
Why?
Because I think that corporate America should be dealing in much more hard aspects of the issues rather than just dealing in conclusatory, emotional kind of appeals.
Conclusatory? What do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at those ads, the Conoco ad with the seals and I mean, that's an emotional appeal, having penguins and seals clapping. That doesn't tell you anything about what they're doing or the consequences of what they're doing or alternative policies. I mean, my view is that what corporate America should be doing is creating a dialogue and debate on important public policy issues in a political sense. I don't think these ads contribute to that.
So are these companies, in effect, not saying that they're more responsible, but that they know they have a tougher emotional political battle to fight?
Yeah, I think they've made a judgment. I'm not privy to the decision-making anymore, but I think they've made a judgment that they have a better chance of prevailing by playing the same kind of emotionally appealing game that their critics have played for 2 decades. Demonstrations get a lot more attention than hard data about nuclear plants. And when the media covers an event in an extensive fashion, then it gets translated into public policy because congressional people take notice of it. That's how policy is made in the United States, unfortunately.
Someone who has opinions on these issues is Lois Gibbs. She's Executive Director of Citizens Clearinghouse for Hazardous Waste, a national organization that works with community activists. You may remember Lois Gibbs as the woman who discovered toxic waste buried under her community in Love Canal, New York in 1978. And when she organized a citizens protest, she was called an hysterical housewife.
That's right.
You're no longer hysterical.
I'm still hysterical.
You're still
I'm just no longer a housewife.
Since you got involved in 1978, have companies become more responsive? Do you think these ads are communicating a more serious approach to the environment?
Companies have not become more responsive, and I think that it was just said that these ads are emotional. They are there to convince the public that, in fact, they are doing something to protect the environment, that they really do care about the environment. In reality, all they're doing is appealing to this warm and fuzzy feeling for folks. They're really not doing anything at the street level. They're spending millions and millions of dollars of ads on bunnies and birds and, you know, to convince the world that, in fact, they are changing their ways when, in reality, nothing has changed or very little has changed.
Herb Schmerz says that they are emotional ads directed at the emotions of the viewer. Are they having an effect out there? Do you think people where you work at the grassroots level are being influenced by these ads?
Actually, I don't, because they can read in the paper that the ozone layer is getting larger, that the hole there is getting larger. Global warming is happening, that there isn't going to be any safe water to drink. They read about the autism of the families up in Massachusetts, the birth defects of the families in San Jose, the Love Canal, the Cancer Alley in Louisiana. People are not stupid. And I think that what industry is saying is, well, we'll try and fool the public, we'll make these wonderful, pretty ads, and then we'll go along our way.
Do you agree with that?
No. It is clear that Lois is still hysterical about a lot of these issues.
With good reason.
The real issue is the debate ought to be on priorities. And the debate ought to be non-emotional. Emotions should be removed from it. Unfortunately, corporate America is not making the arguments with regard to the consequences of a lot of these things in terms of jobs, in terms of economic growth. I mean, when I look at pollution, I include pollution of burned out buildings in Harlem. When I see pollution, I see schools that are inadequate. I see cuts in the Board of Education budgets. I see libraries closing. That's pollution also. Now, you won't solve that kind of pollution without economic growth. And if you inhibit economic growth,
we should go ahead and poison people for the purpose of economic growth, so that we won't have burnout schools.
What are you
saying? I'm saying that we have to get our priorities in better order than they are. There isn't enough money in the world to solve every social problem that we have. So you have to make some priorities based on real needs. I think that the priorities are now distorted because of the emotional appeals that are being put forth by special interest groups in the area of pollution.
Including yourself. You just said that's what those ads were.
I don't agree with those ads. I've said I don't agree with them. The ads that I would be running would be ads addressed to the debate and in the marketplace of ideas, so that we can get rational judgments based on hard data.
What would be your priority? What would be the first priority you would like to see addressed if we were talking about what you think is crucial?
My view is that nothing happens without economic growth. You can't jobs and expanding our gross national product and bringing the third of the nation that's still ill-housed, ill-clothed, and ill-fed into the mainstream of America.
But is what Lois Gibbs and her people are doing preventing the creation of jobs?
I think that certain aspects of the environmental legislation are counterproductive in terms of economic growth. Profits don't come from the tooth fairy. They come from the sale of goods and services. And if you want corporate profits to be used in a particular way, it's the consumer who's going to have to bear the burden. And in my view, the consumer ought to be informed of the costs so that they can make a rational judgment. Just as you have environmental impact statements, I think there should be economic impact statements
I don't disagree with that. I think consumers would be willing to pay an extra nickel for a product so that when it was produced, the waste that was generated was either reduced or not generated at all. But you're saying, and I've heard corporations say in reference to the foam issue, consumers need styrofoam. It's critically important. I don't know a consumer in this country who has called up a fast food chain and said, I am not going to buy your burger if I don't have foam. But DuPont will make the argument that it's critical. When consumers were given a choice, they said, we don't want this product. But when industry heard that they did not want this product, they did a whole lot of campaigns and public advertising, just like the ones we've seen earlier, in order to convince the consumer that they must have this product, that they cannot live in the United States of America without foam.
And that's the problem, because corporate America is not going into the marketplace and making an effective argument based on priorities. You know how when you buy a gallon of gasoline, it has allocated how much the tax is and how much, state tax. What we ought to do is every time a product is sold, it ought to have an allocated part, how much it's costing for environmental protection, so that the consumer knows what he's paying. Maybe they won't like it.
And we should add to that the list of chemicals that are being dumped into the environment. So the consumer pays this, and these are the people, the chemicals that are...
That's the debate, and my view is...
It's not a debate. I think
we agree on this. The debate is to develop priorities based on what the public is willing to pay for and what makes the most sense in terms of the limited amount of capital.
And that takes us down to the grassroots level. You mentioned Cancer Alley a moment ago. Cancer Alley in Louisiana is one of those, some people call it Cancer Alley, some people call it Chemical Alley. It's one of those places where a lot of corporations have come to nest and where grassroots activists are beginning to speak to the reality that lies behind the images we saw in those commercials. Let's look at this report from Louisiana.
Smokestacks, companies, poisons, surrounded by communities in marshlands, along a beautiful river.
For 2 days last March, I traveled an 87-mile stretch in Louisiana along the Great Mississippi River Road between Baton Rouge and New Orleans with Pat Bryant.
Children sick, some losing their vision, all kinds of diseases, crooked politicians, and loving people.
This used to be called plantation country, but the arrival of more than 125 chemical corporations in recent decades has drastically altered the landscape. Each year, they release about 450 million pounds of toxic chemicals into the environment here.
We began to call it Cancer Alley about 5 years ago because the cancer rate is so high here.
Louisiana has the highest lung cancer rate in the country.
You know, this is past a national disaster.
Bryant is a community organizer. He's been helping rural citizens who want the chemical industry to operate more responsibly. What happens to people down here who speak out against these big companies?
You could lose your business if you're in business. You could get blackballed if you're a worker. The petrochemical companies own the state. At least our politicians have given them the state. We've been so dirt poor in the South, in the deep South. We need jobs so badly, and we need development so badly that any industry that comes, we will accept.
Our first stop, Hunville. Butt Cuts Place?
Center of the community.
Bryant meets with local activists twice a month at Butt Cuts Restaurant.
These people have educated me. They have taught me how severe it is.
You go through some of these areas at night, man, the plants, it look like the machines are running 100 miles an hour, you know? And the stuff is coming out. We don't know what it is. All we know is something coming out.
I think people are held hostage to the chemical companies because it's a matter of make your choice, either cancer or unemployment.
So you've got very high rates of cancer down here. It's an unhealthy place to live.
They will say that it has nothing to do with the millions of pounds of chemicals that they place into the environment. They will tell you that it's our lifestyle that is responsible for the high incidence.
Food. Oh, look at that. Hot sausages over there, hamburger, shrimp, fish, roast beef, chicken plates.
This ain't his joke.
It's Joe. In addition to lung cancer, other forms of cancer have appeared in communities along the river. Millions of dollars have been spent studying the problem, but so far, no official link has been made between cancer and the chemical industry.
The government is quick to tell us that it's our lifestyles. Now they've got a new angle. It's not only the food we eat, but it's the way we cook it here. So I guess it's all those Cajun seasonings.
Seafood, shrimp, is killing us.
Kay and Chris Godet have lived in St. Gabriel for 17 years. Concerns about mysterious health problems there turned them into activists.
Being pharmacists, both of us are pharmacists, we knew what we were seeing happening to the community. We knew the types of drugs we were selling, and we would have people coming into our pharmacy, pharmaceutical salesmen, that would tell us, you know, y'all are the sinus capital of the world. I sell more sinus medication here than I sell all over the United States, than we sell all over the United States. And that got us thinking, well, you know, why are we different here?
What else could you suspect from the drugs you were selling?
Well, for 9 consecutive months, being computerized in the pharmacy, we could generate what we call drug usage reports. For 9 consecutive months, the number 2 drug dispensed in our pharmacy was a drug used to treat cancer. And when there's a top 200 list of drugs dispensed nationwide that we had to learn as students, you know, that's one of the things. So annually that report is generated for the country. And the number 1 drug in our pharmacy was the number 1 drug of the top 200 across the nation. The number 2 drug in our pharmacy was not even being reported in the top 200 drugs used nationwide. So we knew there's something wrong here.
I grew up in Thibodaux, Louisiana. I drank Bayou Lafourche water for 22 years before I moved to Baton Rouge. And if I thought it was a health threat, I'd be out of here in a New York second.
Dan Bournet is president of the Louisiana Chemical Association.
I think there are some health problems in this state that could possibly be attributed to the chemical industry. But I also know this state has health problems that are due to poverty, or due to poor education, or due in many cases to either slow access or delayed and too late an access to our health system. So no, I think the chemical industry overall has been a positive for this state.
Whose fault? Whose fault? If it's not your fault, whose fault is it, Jack?
We were in St. Gabriel 1 week after a nearby company accidentally released 10 tons of chlorine into the air. The alarm wasn't sounded. Local citizens were not notified immediately, and they were not evacuated.
We need you to be responsible, to get together with the chemical industry. Don't wait till an accident happens. The people I talked to, when I asked them, what do you do in a chemical emergency? They just shrug their shoulders.
Would you make
I
that
don't know.
available?
We want to get them here face to face. We want to show them that we're not afraid of them, and we have our own recommendations on how to improve the system.
We've got to figure a way to make the siren go off quicker or somebody's going to die. It's that plain and simple. It's got to be quick, it's got to be now, or somebody's going to die.
And we think that the chemical industries are responsible for the leaks. They ought to be responsible for educating the citizen.
This is your book you're about to publish, The Great Louisiana Tax Giveaway, a decade of corporate welfare in Louisiana. You mean that, corporate welfare?
We do mean it.
Godet heads the Louisiana Citizens for Tax Justice, which sponsored the report.
And industry gets very upset when we say it because they say they deserve it. Well, they don't deserve it. The people in the communities deserve that money, not them.
According to the report, Louisiana gave corporations tax breaks worth $2.5 billion in the 1980s. Most of the money went to Fortune 500 companies. $96 million went to Shell Oil, 93 to Exxon, 76 to Texaco, 61 to Dow, 56 to Mobil, 46 to DuPont, 38 to Occidental Petroleum, and 30 million went to Union Carbide.
And a lot of the money that's going to industrial tax exemptions could be going to our roads, our schools, our local governments, fire protection, hazardous materials handling, the kind of things that we're talking about at the meeting tonight, emergency response. All those things, we could get the money from these tax exemptions. But unfortunately, it's going to the chemical industry who, instead of being responsible, putting it back into the community, are putting it in their big fat wallets and going out of state with it.
Until 1990, the Godets ran the only pharmacy in St. Gabriel. But when they stood up to the industry, they lost their customers.
You know, we're in a profession to try and help people. And part of our profession told us if something's wrong with the community, we need to get involved and try to fix it. But because of our involvement in trying to fix it, we had to eventually close down the business.
Employees of industry had come to us and told us that they had to make a choice, their job or patronizing our pharmacy.
And they really choke you up when you have friends who no longer speak to you, when you have people that you've gotten up in the middle of the night and fill a prescription for won't come and see you anymore, and they feel afraid to talk to you. These bastards are tough to fight against. They really are.
God didn't give us the white beaches that he gave Florida. He didn't give us the 3 Miss Americas that he gave Mississippi. He gave us dead dinosaurs. He gave us fossil fuels. And from that fossil fuel base has come oil refineries and has come the chemical industry that's followed the barrel of oil and the MCF of gas. Even with those huge tax exemptions, which we don't argue with, even with those, there is still a huge economic spin-off from this industry in this state.
In the way of?
Well, in the way of jobs, for example. Just in the chemical industry alone, there are 35,000 full-time jobs. Is that a license to pollute? No, it isn't. And we're learning that more and more now as we listen to our neighbors more and more.
With few exceptions, companies have settled in poor districts where residents rarely have had enough political or economic clout to protect and preserve their communities.
They always talk about giving something back to the community. In this instance, they took every part of this community they could take except the graveyard.
Slowly, industry has bought up land and pushed people out.
You have scores of communities that have ceased to exist all over the Southland and several.
But local people are beginning to force corporations to pay a price for the devastation of their communities.
Anybody want to come in? Come on.
Ada Mae Gaines, mother of 8, grandmother to 20, and full-time elementary school janitor, is one of those standing up to big industry. I haven't had grits like that in years. Over a Southern breakfast, she and friend Janice Dickerson told me about their battle.
You know, we were fighters. We came from people who will fight. I mean, this is the whole thing with Miss Gaines. Miss Gaines is a fighter. We are not going to just stretch out and allow America, corporate America, to walk on us.
In 1965, Mrs. Gaines and her family moved to a small town called Sunrise, where her children played in open fields and breathe fresh air. 10 years later, Placid Oil Company built a refinery right next door and began manufacturing gasoline, diesel, and military jet fuel. What did you notice? Could you smell?
Yes. Smell the eyes burn. Called this child here. I've always had a problem with him with sinus. My oldest grandson. Oh my God. He was a mess with it. There was certain time you had to put a towel over the nose with the water to, you know, keep this other scent from getting in. There was a smog sometimes so thick over there. Your eyes just burned.
Recently, Mrs. Gaines and some of her neighbors joined forces. They gave Placid Oil a choice: stop polluting or pay for Sunrise residents to move to safer neighborhoods.
Every morning I got up at 7 o'clock, got my little grandmas off to school. I walked out in front Placid.
In front of the plant?
In front of the plant. We had ice threw on us.
Ice?
Yeah, from the passing vehicle, yelling, you know, go nigger, go. Yeah. And I tell them this nigger gonna stay here till she get what she want.
In June 1991, the protesters finally filed a lawsuit. 2 months ago, Mrs. Gaines and her family moved into this house about 10 miles from Sunrise.
We consider it a victory.
Yes.
Folk may not look at it that way, even though we lost our community. Po folk forced Placid Oil Company to act on a lawsuit.
And I'll do it today, all over again. I don't want to stand and say like, oh, I got mine, that's it. Oh, no. I want to go on and help somebody else. Keep talking, keep walking, and let them know that we are going to come together. And we are going to do it. And folks are going to listen.
What these people I've been talking to in Hanville and Sunrise and places like that is say these big chemical companies have the law on their side because they own the politicians. Look at the PAC contributions. Look at the members of legislatures and senators that they can get to. These big contributions, the wealth of the industry gets access to the lawmakers that we don't in the communities have. They say it's not fair.
I think that's changing, Bill. I think the more public attention that is focused on this, the more sensitive the politicians have become. And the politicians are not going to turn the public off on an issue as critical as the environment. It's too big a deal for too many people.
So you're saying that these people who are organizing and protesting are in fact having an effect?
Absolutely.
On you and the politicians?
Absolutely, positively.
We got valuable land here that was given to the older people, sold to them, when they thought it had no value. Now it's valuable because of this river badger. That is the important thing right here, that river badger.
The town of Wallace, population 400, sits right in the middle of the last 28 miles of rural countryside in Chemical Alley.
We have some other evidence that in 1846 it was here. No kidding.
Wilfred Green, a retired school principal from Wallace, would like to keep it that way. So the Formosa plant would be right over there where that tower is. Formosa Plastics, a billion-dollar chemical company, plans to build the world's largest rayon and pulp processing plant here in Wallace. You're fighting it?
Till I die.
Green and Samuel Jackson are refusing to sell their land to Formosa. So don't you want to sell them your land so that...
No. We want to live.
You can retire in comfort.
I'm living in kind comfort now. I'm living in comfort now. I'm living, I'm doing what I want to do, so money is not the thing that makes a man live in comfort.
The wrong type of plant is being built here. It's like Formosa is...
Why is it a wrong kind of plant?
It's a chemical plant. It's a paper mill. It's a pulp mill. Their main discharge dioxin. That's cancer causing.
Formosa's operations have left a trail of pollution from Taiwan to Texas. 2 years ago, the Environmental Protection Agency leveled its highest fine ever, $8.3 million, against Formosa for contaminating soil and groundwater in Texas. Still, the Louisiana government has worked hard to lure the Formosa plant to Wallace.
All these people want is they're going to come here and build a company in this community, destroy this community, run everybody out of the community. You know where they're going to live? Baton Rouge, Texas. They're going to live somewhere else. They're not going to live here. But I'm the one that's got to breathe that stuff at night. I'm the one going to be laying around here going, I wonder, can I get my breath?
Sure, we need a shot of economics in this area, but we're willing to pay that price. That price is too high. The price of the community, the price of the environment is too high.
Do you think it's either or? Does it have to be a company coming at the expense of the environment? Isn't there a middle ground?
There should be, but there's not. And unless you put pressure on them, you won't force them to be accountable. No one's trying to make them accountable.
They are saying to you, we are going to bring in 3,000 families into this community. That's what they are saying. I'm saying, if you are going to bring in that many people into this community, you are going to bring in a tremendous burden to the school system. See? You are going to bring in all those people. You're going to bring in crimes of all kinds. We're going to need police protection. We're going to need health care. We're going to need a little bit of everything. But you don't put anything here.
Doesn't the company pay taxes?
No, the company don't pay any taxes. When they're looking for tax breaks now, they're looking for what they're going to pay tax.
Tax exempt and for 10 years. And then when after 10 years is up, they expand or remodel, which give them another 10-year tax break.
So can we get better off by you taking from us what we already don't have? Or do we need somebody to come in this community that's going to bring something in this community that's going to help the people in this community to survive? Look at these little bit of kids here. Who's looking out for them? Who's looking out for them? If those of us who have a little sense don't look out for them, they are going to go through the same identical thing that my father, great-grandparent, all of them went through. And we are those that we said, what? We are not going to live today and let that go happen. We want to take our own destiny in our own hands.
We're building a movement that will change the face of this country, a movement that hopefully will join with labor and join with religious organizations, join with students. This movement is about saving not just people of color, but all of us.
What's happening in Louisiana is happening at the grassroots around the country, and we have some people here to talk about the issues raised when citizens fight pollution. But first, a politician who has dealt with the chemical industry from the corridors of power. Buddy Roemer was governor of Louisiana from 1988 until January of this year. He joins us now from WGBH in Boston. Governor Roemer, you heard Pat Bryant say that the petrochemical companies own the state of Louisiana. Is that true?
No, but there's an element of truth in it, Bill. For years, Louisiana had no laws that regulated the giving of money to politicians. And some companies, not all companies, but some companies gave untold millions to legislators and governors and other elected officials. That is true. 4 years ago, when I ran for governor, I said I would accept no such unlimited money. We set some limits voluntarily. We won. It's now the law in the state. So for the first time, the public knows what companies give what money to what politicians, and it is limited. But the issue is money, Bill. The man is right there. It's about tax breaks, and that's the public's money. And I think the public ought to be involved in it. I believe that 4 years ago. I believe that more today.
What about those tax breaks? One report says that the major polluters get 80% of the tax breaks given by the state of Louisiana.
I don't know what that exact number is, but that would not surprise me because the major companies are the major polluters, and they get the tax breaks. Louisiana competes with Texas and Mississippi and Arkansas and New York and Massachusetts and California in tax breaks.
And the companies play the governors of those states off against each other, don't they?
Yes, they do.
If you don't give us a tax break in Louisiana, we'll go to Texas. If you don't give it to us in Texas, we'll come to New York.
I plead guilty. I fought hard for jobs, as does every governor. I plead guilty. What we did in our state, though, different from California, New York, Texas, and Mississippi, is that we developed an economic scorecard, an environmental scorecard, that every company that came to us for a tax break had to go through this scorecard, and we gave them a break only after reviewing their environmental record, the jobs they created, and what they were going to do with the money. Now, We did this for the last year I was in office, and I think it helped beat me when I ran for election. I might, you know, one of your guys talked about the price that consumers pay. I'll talk about the price that I paid. When I ran for re-election this last time, a major company in our state spent untold hundreds of thousands of dollars to run its own independent ads against me. Why? Because of the environmental scorecard.
I thought you said that you had cleaned, that you in Louisiana had cleaned up the money tap, that you.
We did. What we failed to recognize, Bill, and you might be akin to this, is how intelligent some of these corporations are at reading the fine print in the law. There was no prohibition in the law for an independent company to spend independent money to say whatever they wanted to say on television. And the last 10 weeks of that race was characterized by $200,000, $300,000, or $400,000 spent on independent money attacking me on what? The environment. That I was too tough, that I was too hard, and the companies can beat up on me all day. I think we're right and they're wrong.
What about what these people in the grassroots level down at Hanville and Wallace are up? What are they up against when they take on the industry?
Well, I'm uncomfortable tonight talking about industry because companies are different. They're like people. Many companies in our state are very responsible, good citizens, and I love working with them. There are a few who are interested only in the bottom line. And what the citizens have to battle is how do we reach the bottom line?
So often the issue is cast jobs versus the environment. Yet this same study shows that those major corporations that got 80%, the major polluters that got 80% of the tax breaks created only 20% of the jobs. In fact, one company, Tenneco, got something like $53 million to create just 61 jobs at the refinery.
We took the companies at their own word. They say, we create jobs. We said, all right, we'll give you 50% of the tax breaks if you can show us the jobs you created. They screamed bloody murder. It's about money. It's not about jobs to the companies. To the citizens, it's about jobs and lifestyle and being able to breathe the air.
Governor Romer, stand by with us up in Boston. We asked the Chemical Manufacturing Association, which represents the major chemical corporations in the country, to send a representative to join this discussion, and they declined. But William Mulligan has joined us. He is Manager of Environmental Affairs for the Chevron Corporation, one of the largest refiners and marketers of petroleum products in the United States, and he's one of the bravest men I have met. Bill Mulligan, how do you see this whole issue between jobs, tax breaks, environment, ads, images, and reality as from where you sit and work?
I don't even know where to begin to answer that question because it's so complex. I'd like to kind of just pick up on what Governor Romer said because I think it's an important point. Every corporation that operates in Louisiana or anywhere else in this country, for that matter, they're not all alike. And I think that's just the reality of what we're dealing with as far as industry. I can only speak for my company, Chevron Corporation, and what we're trying to accomplish. We'd like to believe that the issue is not either jobs or the environment, that you can somehow synthesize both of those things into where jobs and the environment will really matter. One of the most important trends that's finally beginning to emerge is the fact that industry is beginning to sort of open itself up to the communities through an awful lot of community awareness groups and to begin to this process of helping them understand what it is that we're doing, how we're doing it, and at the same time understand what their concerns are and understand what's driving their emotions.
What about that, Lois Gibbs?
Well, I disagree. I mean, I think that there are committees put together, but they're committees to really try and co-opt the community as part of a decision, as a decision-making process. Then it's not true. It's not true communication. It's not true equality. So the community comes in and sits with Chevron and says, in your Richmond site, for example, California, that we want to have a say on the alarm system. We want to have a say on the emissions. We want to have a say. And you say, okay, give us your comments. People give their comments, and then everybody goes away. And they don't have any decision-making power. And Chevron and other companies don't give them that power, don't give them what they want. And it becomes a theoretical debate. We want, and you say, thank you very much for your comment, and we will do as we please.
I think the use of the term co-opt is a little bit of a harsh term because we don't go into those kinds of things with that in mind. That is not our objective or intention by any stretch of the imagination. The thing that's beginning to happen in corporate America today is dialogue. We fully appreciate, the value of that kind of dialogue, and I'll be the first to admit, much of that dialogue did not exist in the past. But I think we're beginning to see the wisdom of that thing.
Let me come back to something Lois said. The idea of turning decision-making over to outside groups is absurd. You'd have 44 different local groups saying what they want to say, and what are you going to do? You're going to hold a referendum on it? Somebody has to make the final decision. I think listening to what people have to say, taking it into consideration in a responsive way is fine. Turning decision-making over, which is what you've proposed.
Okay, let me just say that I don't hear Lois saying that she wants to run the company. I don't hear the citizens saying that they want to run Mobil or Chevron or any company in America. I hear the citizens saying, we want to know what the truth is. What are you putting in the air? What are you putting in the water? Could you do a better job? Do you have alarm systems for us? What public money are you using? I think the public has the right to know that.
If Lois is saying that, I have no problem.
Joel Hirshhorn worked in the Congressional Office of Technology Assessment during the Reagan and Bush administrations, and today he advises corporations on how to implement clean technologies and pollution prevention without, he says, compromising competitiveness. Joel Hirshhorn, are these companies changing as fast as Lois Gibbs would like for them to, and as our friends from the corporate world say they are?
No, they're not changing fast enough. For the last 20 years, essentially, instead of having a win-win kind of strategy, we have a lose-lose strategy. Industry is losing. They're spending enormous sums of money, but they're spending it in the wrong ways, essentially, because government regulation is forcing them to deal with waste and pollution after they create the waste and pollution.
Tell them, I don't work in the
And
industry.
American industry is creating more waste and pollution than our competitors in the global marketplace. Lois is also losing. The American citizens are also losing because they are being exposed to more and more toxic chemicals and waste and feel more and more threatened. What I'm saying is we have to go to a win-win strategy where both industry wins and the citizens win.
What do you want industry to do?
I want industry...
Tell Bill over there how to run his place, his job.
I want Chevron and every other major American corporation to take the environmental demands from the citizens, the victims in America, and turn those demands into a new business strategy, into new technologies, into new environmentally responsible products. There is a global marketplace out there that's being created by the public's environmental demands. And American companies like Chevron are going to be the General Motors of the future if they don't learn how to convert environmental demands into new products, safe products, into new manufacturing technologies, and using new raw materials. Instead of using petroleum to make plastics, we can use crops to make substitutes for plastics, for example. And American corporations need to stop this sort of scam advertising about what they say they are doing and start to produce the data, the actual data that shows Americans what they are actually doing in terms of pollution prevention and waste reduction.
What about that, Bill Mulligan?
One of the things that we're trying to do is to communicate not just based on nice advertisements or anything like that. We're trying to communicate our performance because, just as Joel said, we are doing a lot of things in the companies. Granted, it might be driven by things like regulation. It might be driven by other kind of motives. But what we're hearing more and more today is the fact that communities are telling us, writing to us, shareholders are writing to us, the consumers are talking to us, and we're not dumb.
Governor Roman, did you see down in Louisiana evidence that what Bill Mulligan is saying was actually happening with the companies?
All this environmental scorecard that I talked about that Louisiana got all the awards for last year and the year before, the first thing that the new administration did this year taking office was do away with the environmental scorecard.
Your successor,
and many
you
of
mean?
the companies in Louisiana cheered and roared.
You mean
so
your
the
successor?
performance is mixed, Bill.
This was your successor, the man who defeated you.
Exactly.
Let me come back, though, to what, Joel, on another occasion you said to me that the solution is not more conflict between Lois Gibbs and Herb Schmerz or Bill Mulligan at Chevron. The solution is in better engineering for our products, to find a way to produce the things that we all consume without polluting the environment. Now, are companies doing that?
that they're not doing enough. Individual companies may have some good programs, but here's the point. Every study has shown that between 50 and 75% of all the industrial waste and pollution can be eliminated. We have to use what people call clean technology. The Japanese, the Dutch, the Germans, they're smarter than us. You know, they're using more efficient manufacturing technologies, and they're beginning to produce more environmentally responsible products in the marketplace, simply to take the demands and turn it into smart business strategy.
Is pollution control?
Industry doesn't want to do it because of the cost. I mean, it costs money to change those processes.
That's the point that I think a lot of American industry is still missing. That we're not
Because
talking
it's a
about
short-term
increasing
cost.
costs.
That's right.
We're talking about making American industry more efficient, producing less waste. Why is it, if you look at the numbers, American industry produces more waste per unit output than competing industrialized countries?
Is pollution prevention profitable, Bill, Herb?
We'd like to believe that pollution prevention is profitable. In fact, we've set that as one of our strategic responses, as a corporation, and trying to grapple with some of the rising cost of just trying to be in compliance. We're in the energy business. We're not in the waste management business. So every pound of waste that we can avoid having to manage, we avoid that cost associated with it. So there's a built-in financial incentive for us to engage in those kinds of practices.
And I think that's where the grassroots movement has made the change in this country. And I think that you would agree that when you had disposal places where you could dump that waste cheaply and easily, or when you could put it up the stack, or whatever the case may be, you did less. I mean, you polluted more, and you did less sort of reduction and controlling of that waste stream.
It is true that that more could be done to efficiently handle pollution, but a lot of the problems have come from environmentally motivated restrictions. Let me give you two examples. The Japanese incinerate virtually all their waste. Incinerators are an anathema to the environmental movement in the United States. The Japanese are moving just enormously rapidly, as have the French, to get their electricity onto nuclear power. Clean, safe, non-polluting. In the United States, we have virtually destroyed the nuclear energy in this country as a result of misguided environmental concerns. So those are the kinds of debates and trade-offs that are needed. Yes, more could be done, but a lot of the technology that could be used is being blocked by environmentalists.
Governor Romer, come in up there.
First of all, Lois is the most important person on this program. And what she represents is the most important step on the path to clean air and bright water.
How's that?
That is, we have to get people involved. I believe that if corporate America reaches out to its customers in terms of the environmental lifestyle that the customers lead, that corporate America will be more profitable. I don't care what the Japanese do. If we take care of our air and water, we win.
Lois Gibbs, what happens when citizens get involved? I mean, you haven't fared that nicely at their hands, have you?
No, you're dismissed as I was here by the gentleman across the table, as hysterical, emotional, that you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you know, I know when my children are sick, and I know when there's a cluster of disease in my neighborhood and there's only one potential source.
But didn't one company in particular go after you?
Several companies have gone after us. Most recently was Union Carbide. They went after us because, you know, I was actually going to raise that earlier. We were talking about dialogue and how corporations want to dialogue with citizens. Well, I don't find that to be true. And
what happened?
Union Carbide wrote a memo to all of their vice presidents of all of their divisions about Citizens Clearinghouse for Hazardous Waste.
Your organization?
My organization. That red-baited us, called us, actually I have a copy of it, we're one of the most radical coalitions operating under the environmentalist banners. We have ties into laborers, the Communist Party, and all manner of folk with private and single agenda. This is an internal memo. He's saying to his vice presidents, pay attention to what the grassroots movement's doing, is that if accomplished in total, would restructure U.S. society into something unrecognizable and probably unworkable. Union Carbide saw us as a threat to their status quo. They didn't look at this to say, gee, we need to go and sit with the folks at the clearinghouse and see how we could dialogue, how we could make decisions. Instead, they slandered us, they called us names, and they said, watch out.
You know, The background of the entire environmental movement is, in fact, steeped in adversarialism. And I think we've had to learn over time that we could go to the communities, begin to dialogue with them, engage in the win-win that I think Joel was really talking about, and actually affect a positive outcome for both sides.
But let's be clear, when we saw on the news clip earlier, the family who was run out of business. They used to be a pharmaceutical. I mean, they used to do drugs for the local community.
And they said to me that the people who worked for the companies came and said to them that they had been told by the companies either quit your job or stop buying at this pharmacy.
And Occidental Petroleum said residents who lived at Love Canal and worked in the plant, that those who worked in the plants should not take a public position on Love Canal. When you look at so many, we just had a woman from Procter & Gamble down in Florida who was brutally beaten and was told to shut up about Procter & Gamble. Linda Paxton's house in California was burnt this week. A private investigator is investigating Kathy in western New York.
What are you going to tell the farmers, the apple farmers in Washington who were put into bankruptcy by erroneous reports about Ally? What are you going to tell them? That you're sorry you made a mistake?
How many years have people been saying that LR is dangerous and one should be concerned,
proved not to be true,
farmers, and they're
those
not
farmers went into
necessarily family
bankruptcy.
farmers. Let's not confuse family farmers
went into bankruptcy,
corporate
and you're going to go
farmers.
up there and tell them you were wrong.
I'm going to go up there and tell them that if they're good corporations and if they really care about selling their product, that they ought to pay attention that people are not going to accept things that are going to harm.
But you created a hysterical situation
how do we end the
which damaged the apple industry.
Instead of all this, attacking of each other, what we really need to address is how do we make the marketplace work? How do I, as a consumer, and all these people here, differentiate products in the marketplace? The only way consumers can buy products from the best companies, the best in terms of environmental performance, is to be given some credible, accurate information. Information about specific products, information about the performance of corporations. Now, and as an example, Mobil fooled the public, tried to fool the public about degradable plastics. That's false and misleading. A lot of false and misleading information has gone out there in the marketplace by companies trying to, take these public demands for environmental performance and sell them some product. And a lot of this is false and misleading. Some of it is honest. We have between 500 and 1,000 new American companies who are selling new, green, environmentally responsible products. There is a lot of innovation going on, but there's also a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And the only way we're going to get rid of this confusion is through labeling, environmental claims, which are regulated by the government, terms of art, so to speak, that are defined by EPA, perhaps, and a lot of data and a lot of reliable information, not pictures of dolphins and whales, but give me the data on how much less toxic chemical you're producing per gallon of gasoline, for example.
If you want information in the marketplace, which I support, then you have to give the full range and spectrum of information, and that includes costs, that includes jobs lost, that includes lack of economic growth, that includes lack of competitiveness.
And it also includes your tax breaks that industry is getting and other subsidies.
Is the Vice President's Competitive Council, which is trying to balance these issues.
They're as wrong-headed as you, quite frankly, because you keep seeing environmental demands as costing industry money rather than making them more profitable.
Well, all I'm asking for is disclosure. I'm just asking for disclosure.
That's what people are asking for, too, and Niagara Falls.
I'm all for it.
Governor Romer, up there in the late, great state of Harvard, you've got the last word. Was it worth sacrificing your political career to stand up on these issues?
No, I don't think I sacrificed my political career.
You said
whether
the
you hold
companies
an
beat
office, you win some, you lose some. That's not the issue with me. There are two thoughts that come to mind listening to our program and your great guest. One is the marketplace.
You're not out of politics yet.
No, not out yet. Number one is the marketplace will dictate what we do. Number two, the man who asked the question, what do you say to the farmers? That's a very good question. What do you say to the farmers? I would put those two thoughts together in one point. I'm tired of, I'm sick of, I'm weary of shouting at each other. It's time for us to sit down. I think the best way to compete is to cooperate. If we cooperate on the air we breathe and the water we drink, America will beat the world on the environment, and we'll sell it in Europe and around the world. It's good business.
Well, we're not out of energy, we're not out of issues, but we are out of time. I want to thank you, Governor Romer, for joining us, Lois Gibbs, who represents not only consumers but citizens, Gerald Hirshhorn, advisor to corporations on technology and environmental prevention, Bill Mulligan of Chevron, thank you for coming here today and representing your company, and Herb Schmertz, who introduced Masterpiece Theater to public broadcasting. I'm Bill Moyers. Thank you for joining us for Listening to America. We'll be back next week. Next time on Listening to America, how does the American economy look to you?
Lousy. Very lousy.
Do you think it's going to get better or worse?
I hope we'll get better, and I think we'll get better. It's supposed to get better.
I read about signs of recovery, but I haven't personally seen any.
I thought it would be a little easier by now. I did.
How's business? Next on Listening to America, Curing the Economy.
Listening to America was made possible by Mutual of America and its family of companies. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, a catalyst for change. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and viewers like you.